Welcome back, YouTube. In today's educational video, we're going to be talking about 5 hard truths about building your dream physique, and some things that I wish I was told early on, because I think with expectations versus reality, they can often be pretty misconstrued. And I always try and relate to myself within these videos, so hopefully at least one of you can maybe relate in some way as well. And I think as a common theme is nowadays social media being a big part of everyone's life. I remember 7 years ago, this summer actually, I signed up with my very first coach. And the reason why I signed up with this coach is because he had a physique that I massively kind of aspired to achieve. And little did I know, or little was I aware, that firstly, he'd been training for multiple years prior to obviously the physique that he had at the current time. My kind of expectations then were, if I sign up with him, I'll have a physique much like his. And also, I didn't realise until 3 months in that he was an assisted athlete as well. So, I was essentially chasing a very unrealistic goal and physique because I thought that's kind of how it worked back then. So within this video, we're going to kind of talk through and debunk some myths and also just kind of set some real kind of expectations of what is possible for building your dream physique. So I think number one, the most important thing, it goes without saying that results, they do take time. And if you are to maybe look at someone's physique on Instagram or even look at my physique, I've been training over a decade now. I'm 28 and I started properly training. I say properly, I started taking it a bit more seriously when I was probably around about 17, 18, so even over 10 years I've been training in some form. And no matter, the first maybe 5 years weren't completely dialed in like they are now, but even still I have been going to the gym regularly, consistently, eating relatively well, obviously nowhere near the standards that I'm doing now, but I think a lot of people will maybe see a physique on Instagram and not know much about the history of the individual. So I think it's important to kind of forget about something that was quite common like maybe 2 or 3 years ago within the industry was like, and again still nowadays, and I can see the benefit of some of them, like 30-day challenges and 8-week challenges and 6-week shreds. But if you are serious about results and serious about changing your physique, and I know for a lot of you, you will be because you're watching this channel, and hopefully by now you can understand that I'm quite upfront and honest with things like this. I'm not going to sit here and lie and sell you a dream and say that you're going to be able to achieve a physique like X, time frame Y, because it's just not realistic. And there's so many factors that come into play. Genetics, how much training experience they've got, and how well they kind of respond to certain different stimulus, etc. within the gym. So real change takes months, even years, okay? So patience will be your greatest tool on that front. Number 2, the scales can lie. And I'm going to put a video on the screen now of a video when I was 160 pounds, probably around about 4 or 5 years ago, and a video of when I was 160 pounds a couple of months ago. Okay, so you can see a very big difference in regards to how the visuals look. Okay, and there's going to be a number of reasons here. So firstly, in the first video, obviously the amount of muscle mass that I had was definitely not as high as it was in the second video. So I think it's important not to kind of chase a certain scale weight. Of course, you are going to be looking at losing pounds on the scales, of course, to strip body fat to reveal what muscle you've got underneath. But I think the evident sign here is that the exact same scale weight can look very, very different. And this kind of goes back to the first point, time. Within that 4 or 5 years, I built a lot more muscle, okay, even as a natural athlete. And I think if you can set your own expectations and just bring yourself down to reality slightly, that building tissue naturally does take time, like years, okay? And as you get through your kind of training career, obviously the more muscle that you build will probably be at the start of the journey, newbie gains as they're called, and it will start to slow down. But that isn't to say that you can't still build a good amount of muscle and change your physique even more, because obviously as you get older you do get what's called muscle maturity. So the muscle that you build over the years, it does stick around, okay? And then you add on top of that muscle. It's not just a case of every time you diet down, unless obviously you do it wrong, and obviously this is where a coach can be very useful. You keep that muscle and you build on that muscle. So essentially you can imagine that, let's say for example you're 200 pounds now and you strip down to maybe 170 pounds, you lose 30 pounds, okay? that is kind of stripping you back down to baseline. That is revealing the muscle that you've got now, okay? What you then can do from there is go back into a building phase, and this is where, again, time and patience comes into play, because in a world where we want things instantly, people can never lean into delayed gratification. But if you have a bigger vision and an open mindset that, okay, I want to achieve this result, and to be fair, if I look back 10 years now, the physique that I just put on stage these past few months is probably my kind of dream physique from when I started, and that was 10 years ago. So you can imagine how long, that has taken for me to get to that point. Again, everyone's going to be different in regards to timeframes, but when you strip that down, let's go back to the point, and you're 170 pounds, and you look at yourself and you think, yeah, I'm lean, I can see my abs, but I still want a little bit more size. That's when you go into a building phase, you build on top of that, and that muscle that you've already got, you will acquire new tissue on top of that. But every time you do build back up, if done correctly and managed correctly, it's a lot easier to get leaner, and you reveal more and more muscle each time that you cut. A little tip for you here as well, mate, don't know who I'm speaking to, mates, viewers, is spend long enough in a building phase to actually see a change. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was in my early careers of lifting was doing like a bulk, as I would call it back then. Bulk is just a dirty word for a gaining phase. It's like bulk for 2 months and then cut for 2 months, bulk for 2 months, cut for 2 months. And you can imagine there's going to be very, very minimal progress there. And I wasted a lot of my early years jumping from cycle to cycle in regards to what phase I was in. Not cycle as in gear, don't worry guys. But yeah, focus on training progression, energy, how you look. Okay, don't always focus too heavily on the scales, because like I say, 160 pounds there can look very different to 160 pounds here. And then again, another really, really big one is nutrition. You can't cheat your nutrition, okay? If you take your nutrition a lot more seriously, and something that I will always say to my clients is the quality of your nutrition will dictate the quality of your result and your muscle that's built, or the body fat that's stripped. Okay, you can full send every single workout that you do within the gym. You can like I used to train hell for leather in the gym, Monday to Friday, no rest days in between, and I thought that was going to kind of counteract or kind of buffer and offset what damage was done on the weekend, where I would just kind of eat what I wanted, wouldn't stick to any routine. I would go out drinking, and you simply can't kind of cheat nutrition. Okay, the old saying goes, you can't out train, shit food basically. So you'll just end up spinning your wheels. I hate that saying, spinning your wheels. But you will, you'll just end up, Monday to Friday, I've had a solid week, now I can do what I want on the weekend. My biggest tip is, if you are serious about changing your physique, and changing it a big amount as well, not just like, look a little bit better, treat your weekends very similar to how you would treat your weekdays, okay? And I know for a lot of people listening to this, that'll be like, oh, that's boring, you need to have a balanced lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. I agree, you do need to have a balanced lifestyle, but I tell you what, it can come, and a balanced lifestyle, once you've got that physique that you've been chasing, feels a lot better than having a balanced lifestyle when you're still unhappy with your physique, okay? And again, it just leads to frustration, lack of adherence, and then it obviously leads to lack of results as well. So you're just kind of going around in this vicious cycle of never really getting to where you want. Number 4, and this is very similar to the video from last week, motivation will fade, but there will be days that you don't feel like doing it. For a lot of people, probably going to be a Monday morning, or a Sunday night, or a Saturday, or a Friday, around that weekend. That's when the motivation's going to fade. Like, a lot of people's goals are super important to them, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. As soon as that weekend comes around, ooh, you know what? I think a beer is more motivating at the minute, as opposed to keeping, to my word and doing what I said I'd do. So yeah, this is where, again, cliche. A lot of sayings nowadays within the industry, and probably what you hear on YouTube and Instagram, they are all flying around. But again, like I've said to you before, it's because they hold truth, and it is where discipline kicks in. Like, don't get me wrong, even during prep for my first bodybuilding season this year, I got to a Friday, the sun was out, I was driving back from the gym, that feeling came back of like, oh my God, beer garden. The group chat was going off, boys, let's go to beer garden. Hannah was going out. That's when the motivation will drop, and that is where the discipline needs to kick in. You need to remind yourself of why you've started and the bigger picture, okay? So although it is hard in situations like that to remove yourself from maybe social environments and almost to miss out on life in a way, and I know it sounds a bit harsh and sad, but I have got that balance back now. I'm going out this weekend with my friends, but yes, I did, semi-lock myself away for a year, but to achieve this and to achieve a physique that I only would ever thought was imaginable when I was younger is worth it, because guess what? The beer garden's still there, the friends are still there, everything else is still there. So biggest piece of advice is just rely on that discipline and rely on your why as well when you start thinking about self-doubt. And the final one, and this is the biggest one, and like I've spoken about again before, I do believe psychology and your own mindset is the biggest tool that all of us have. Like, at the end of the day, we every action and kind of thought process that goes through our head every single day governs our actions physically as well. Okay, so if you can control up here, I can guarantee you can control everything else in your life, whether that be your relationships with people, your job, whether you get a promotion, how you kind of talk to yourself. This will trickle and transition into every corner of your life. If you can have a positive mindset, which some people do struggle with, even myself. I'm not going to sit here and say I've got the perfect strong-minded mindset all the time. I don't. I do have self-doubt. There are days where I think, is this even worth it? I don't, in the morning when the alarm goes off at 5, I don't need to get up at that time. You're always going to have that negative voice in your head. Always. It's always going to be there. And I read a book recently about how we do have these kind of two minds. We've got the heckler, who's always going to try and bring us down and find the easy option in life. And we also have the cheerleader, who's always going to pick us up and push us to do better. And if you can, obviously these voices are always going to be there, but if you can have a bigger cheerleader voice as opposed to a bigger heckler voice, you will be able to kind of drown out that noise and progress in every aspect of life. So the journey isn't just about getting jacked, okay? It's about resilience, persistence, and proving to yourself what you're capable of. Your body will always reflect your mindset. So one thing that I always kind of have said is, if you see someone in good shape, like someone who's like jacked or just relatively in good shape, they always have the utmost respect from me, because you know that you can't buy a good physique. If you see someone, especially with like a massive set of legs or something, because leg days are hard, but if you see someone with a good, well-rounded physique that you aspire to look like, you have to give them respect, because that takes time, that takes mental resilience, and that takes a very strong mindset to have. That person that's in very good shape has been disciplined, they've been structured, they've stuck to their word, they've been consistent, they've trained hard, they've ate well for a prolonged amount of time. Okay, so anyone that's in shape, for me anyway, they always have my utmost respect, because I know how much it takes to get there. Okay, so yeah, this is overall the summary of kind of how some hard truths will hit when it's about building your dream physique, and some things not many people will tell you, and I'm here to tell you that these are all, again, perfectly very normal things. But if you lean in on these videos and try and take as much as you can from them, and realize that when motivation might fade, and you get to the weekend and it's, oh, what, my meal plan doesn't really exist anymore. All these things and thoughts are normal, but once you kind of overcome them, you will take yourself to that next level, physically and mentally. Thank you for tuning into this video, guys. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.